All right. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I hope you're looking forward to the weekend too. I'm looking forward to getting taking a little break from the news. There's a lot going on. It's got a lot of times it's kind of depressing. There's a lot of problems we have in the world, and a lot of things that aren't getting solved. A lot of things that need to be solved. A lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of people who are incompetent that seem to be in charge of things, just all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of shit that happens, and I'm just, a little break would be nice. Um, so that's what I'm going to be doing this weekend. I'm going to be just hanging out and taking a break. So, but we've got a lot to talk about today. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on with the fraud. There's a lot going on with California. There's a lot going on in Europe. There's just a lot of these kinds of things going on. And um, you know, the sooner that we can kick the leftists out of control, the leftists have weaved their way into every institution, into every little nook and cranny of the world, into our education system, into our judicial system, into the bureaucracy, into all kinds of things, into the banking system, into all that. And all with that comes all kinds of problems, all kinds of stupid decisions, all kinds of ideological retardation. And there's not much that is being done about it, but slowly the world is coming to its senses, and is starting to kick these leftists out and starting to take back, starting to move more right wing. And as we do that, things are going to stabilize and things are going to feel a lot more normal, because right now it's just crazy shit going on, crazy people making stupid decisions. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up first, and is a really disturbing story out of Spain about a young girl who they euthanized. And it's sort of the logical conclusion of the radical leftist agenda. Okay. And the radical leftists have been going around for the last 60 to 80 years, breaking everything, distorting everything, corrupting everything, all of our societies, our institutions, our cultures. They have been telling us we don't know what we're doing, that we're not smart enough to know how to run our own countries, that even if we wanted to run our own countries, we would be too incompetent. So we need them to tell us how to do it, because they're the moral arbiter. They think they're morally superior. They think they're better than everybody else. They think that they're the ones who have the proper morality, because it's about diversity and multiculturalism and being open to all these different groups and taking care of minorities and all this kind of bullshit. And in so doing, they have basically undermined everything that we had established in the West, and they corrupted it, they destroyed it, they twisted it. And everybody's going to be glad when they're gone, because they've made the world seem so psychotic. You see sort of the culmination of all that with the transgender nonsense, where they can't even tell you what a woman is, right? But they know that what a woman is, because they know a trans woman is a woman, but they don't know what a woman is. And this kind of moronic, um, self-deluded, contradictory worldview that they have, where the second you start inquiring into their ideas or into their philosophy, everything falls apart, because it's all self-contradictory. So, well, are there two genders, or are there multiple genders? Is gender a spectrum? Well, then how do you have transgenders? Wouldn't they just be a different gender on the spectrum? Why does it have to be a woman? Well, it specifically has to be a woman if it's trans woman. This kind of stupid shit. And people are getting fed up with it, and people are tired of it. And then you get the whole immigration thing, where they're just like, hey, bring anybody and everybody into your country. And if you don't want that, then you're the problem. You're the bigot. If you don't want a bunch of third worlders invading your country and taking a bunch of welfare from you and destroying your economy and being a burden on your whole society, and that you have to then take care of their health care, you have to feed them and you have to house them and all that, then you're the problem. You're the bigot. Right? People are tired of this attitude, tired of the school marm, tired of the censorship, tired of always being told what we can and can't say and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. We want control back over our own countries, over our own societies. We want these people gone. We want these quasi communists to get out of our lives, these cultural socialists to stop making everything about oppressed and oppressor, about majority versus minority, against white against black, all these bifurcations that they make and pit each other against each other, pit everyone against each other. The world's grown tired of it, and it should have grown tired of it. And this has been something that people have been trying to get the world to wake up to for a long time now. But because we had it so good, there wasn't much of a reason to do anything about it because it hadn't gotten bad enough for anyone to react. And so it was sort of a lethargy. But now the younger generations, especially, are waking up to this, and they're seeing how ridiculous all these policies are, and this philosophy of cultural socialism and quasi Marxism, communism, that have infiltrated, not directly but indirectly. They've taken over the universities so that they indoctrinate everybody at university. They have rewritten American history and European history to make Americans and Europeans the oppressors of all things, of all the other peoples in the world, not have never accomplished anything good or noble, but have been basically the most evil people that have ever existed. The EU, was it the EU? I think it was the EU. Just now, maybe it was the UN. I don't remember who it was, but anyway, they've all voted and said that slavery was the most evil thing that's ever happened in the history of the world or whatever, basically blaming the West for it, even though slavery's happened all over the world and the West was the only ones who actually ban it, or the first ones to ban it. And slavery still goes on in Africa and the Middle East. And yet none of these self-righteous leftists even seem to bring it up, because in their mind, black and brown people aren't capable of slavery because they're nice and they're kind and they're respectful and they just love them oh so much that they could never do anything bad. But the white Europeans, they are bad, bad, bad. Of course they had slaves. Of course they did all these things. But everybody else, now they didn't do it. That's just made up. So they never tell the true history of slavery. They just tell a very specific version of it just so that they can incriminate the Western world. So anyway, it's retarded, and people are getting sick of it. And it's going to be a great day when we can finally move on from these leftists who have a stranglehold on our culture and on our society and on our institutions. It'll be a great day. Hey guys, if you want, you go ahead and comment, and I will read as many comments as I can. I'll try to pay attention as best I can. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share the video, comment on it afterwards. All that helps grow the channel, and it's fun for me to interact with you guys as well. Good comments, bad comments, doesn't matter to me. I like any comment's a good comment. So, the world is slowly shifting to the right. In the UK, you've got Restore that's just coming on like crazy, and it's going straight up like a rocket ship. Rupert Lowe is a badass. He's what the UK has needed for a while now. He's their version of Trump. So thankfully, Farage was always kind of a pussy. He was always kind of a phony. He never really had it in him to actually do what needed to be done. But Rupert Lowe has what it takes, and he doesn't care, and he's going to do it. And he's not going to sell out, and he's not going to betray his base. He's going to do what he says, and he's going to work towards doing what he says. And so I'm really excited about him. I'm excited for the Brits, and I'm excited about Restore. I'm excited about the young guys who are so energized by it, and finally they have a place. Finally, they have a place that speaks for them, a party that speaks for them, and good things are going to happen over there. There's going to be a big change. So unfortunately, the election's not for a while, but that gives them time to build some momentum and to really build a majority so that they can take over the parliament, and they can take over, and Rupert can be the prime minister. That will be a great day, and I will be celebrating when that happens. Now, you talk to these leftists, And you talk to people who are, oh, I don't know, people 60 and over, and they don't really understand this. They don't really get it. They don't even really know who Rupert Lowe is or who Restore is. They just think it's some kind of flash in the pan, sort of little niche thing over here, because they haven't really been paying attention to the cultural shifts that have been going on, the cultural shift to the right, the fatigue that everyone has with with immigration. Everyone is so tired of it. We're tired of paying for these people. We're tired of the problems they bring. We're tired of reading every day about an illegal immigrant murdering someone or stabbing someone or gangs raping girls and all this kind of stuff. We're all so tired of it. Hey, Dark Light Delirium. Good to see you. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Um, you know, we are so tired of the way that things have been that there's a growing discontent, especially in the young men. And I talk about this a lot, but they are looking for purpose. They're looking for a reason to assert their masculinity, and this is the issue. This takeover by the leftists who've tried to undermine and destroy everything that has been built in our societies, how they've just brought a little bit of poison into every single area of our lives, and then have caused this malaise over our societies that people want to get rid of that. It's a it's a leash upon the people. And no matter who you have voted for in the last 30 years, probably 50 years, it doesn't matter who you vote for, and it doesn't matter what you want as a voter, because the politicians aren't going to, left or right, Republican, Democrat, whatever, they're not going to do what you want them to do. People are so tired of that because aren't we democracies? I thought democracies were ruled by the people, not by the elites, not by the overlords, not by the upper class, not by these people. Our desire and our will is what is supposed to be enacted, and that hasn't happened for 60, 70, 80 years. We say, hey, we don't want these immigrants here for 30 years, and they just say, nah, we're going to bring them in anyway. We say, hey, we don't want gay marriage or whatever, and they say, nah, we're going to do it anyway. And we say, hey, we don't want Roe v. Wade, but they say, we're going to do it anyway. They say, it's over and over and over, and it's been that way constantly. Like in the UK especially, they have been so adamantly against mass migration for so long, and their leaders have just completely ignored them. Just don't even care. So it's like, well, then in what sense do the people actually run their own country? In what sense is this a democracy? It's no longer a democracy. It's something else. It's a plutocracy or an oligarchy or something. It's definitely not a democracy because nobody listens to the people. And then they wonder why these populist movements are taking over the globe, where, there's these grassroots movements to choose people who aren't politicians, somebody like Trump, somebody like Rupert Lowe. And this is the future. This is the way things are moving, especially in Europe, especially in South America. These kinds of movements are taking over everything. And, one of the reasons is this first story that I want to talk to you guys about, because it's a disturbing story. And it's sort of the consequence of leftist domination of your culture. And it's sort of the logical conclusion of the leftist ideology, right? So keep that in mind as I'm telling you about this story. So this is a girl here who is from Spain. And let me tell you a little bit give you a little backstory here. Her name's Noelia Castillo Ramos. She's a Spanish teen removed from loving parents due to financial hardship. She was placed in a migrant-filled shelter. And while she was there, she was repeatedly gang raped by Muslim teens. She reported those rapes. They were ignored by the woke staff to protect the immigrant's image because they didn't want to be racist by calling out that there was these Muslim teens who were raping her repeatedly. So you see, even just right there, you see how ridiculous that is? That is, though, the logical conclusions of all this Oh, majority versus minority, oppressor versus oppressed. Oh, the Muslims are a minority in the country. Therefore, you can't say anything bad about them. You can't call them out for their bad behavior. You can't anything because, then that's just going to be oppression on them. And it's such bullshit. And people are so tired of it. It's like, no, if they're raping people, then like they're lucky we don't just cut their heads off right now. But instead, what they do is they just hide it. They don't bring it up. They don't talk about it. Nope. We can't mention that they're Muslims. We can't talk about their gangs and of raping. This is the retardation that comes along with leftist philosophy. Completely devoid of common sense, of rationality, of justice, of right and wrong. A whole different system of determining those things. One that makes good evil and makes evil good. Now, one of the reasons why they're more concerned about the criminals than they are the victims. Constantly fighting on behalf of the criminals to make sure that the criminals are doing okay, that the criminals aren't being treated unjustly, that the criminals don't spend too much time in prison. Never for 1 second considering the victim and the trauma and the pain and the suffering that an innocent victim who did absolutely nothing wrong has to suffer now for the rest of their lives. Oh, no. They want to focus on, the Muslim rapist. We got to make sure that nobody is mean to the Muslim rapist and that nobody says anything meany about Muslims. So nothing was ever done about this constant raping of her because the staff was a bunch of retarded leftists. That led to her attempting suicide by jumping out of a 5th floor building, which is where she was staying. Well, she didn't die. She actually ended up paralyzing herself and being in constant pain. She then requested, because of her depression and constant pain, she requested euthanasia, which was approved under Spain's 2021 law for irreversible suffering, including depression. And the courts decided that it was okay, even though her family was against it. Not only that, but her organs, her organs were already donated to other people. So when she showed regrets and maybe some hesitation about actually being euthanized, they talked her into doing it anyway because they wanted to sell her organs. Disgusting. This is the final conclusion of all leftist ideology wrapped up into one story. The perpetrators were never held responsible. There was no formal police report or complaint. There was no basis to investigate because no one was willing to turn these Muslims in. There was no names, no descriptions leading to any kind of arrests, nothing. So the victim becomes victimized over and over and over again. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to read this write-up by the AI robot guy on X. He says, "Your parents love you. They fall in difficult financial times. You are ripped away from them by the government. Your grandmother and mom are crying and begging. They bring 12 police officers to stop any resistance. You are placed in a teen shelter full of Muslim migrants. You aren't allowed to leave. The staff treats you like you are worthless. The Muslim teens decide to gang rape you. You think you will get help. Nobody comes. Nobody listens. They rape you again with even more people this time. You try to report it. The women in charge of the shelter are woke liberals. They refuse to report it to avoid making Muslim immigrants look bad. They won't do anything. You try to be happy. You can't move on. You jump from a 5th story of the building. By the grace of God, you live. You are injured, but you still have hope. The state tells you about the option of euthanasia. You pass it off at first. The trauma keeps replaying in your brain. Still nobody is helping. You feel hopeless. Spain is falling. You decide to do it because you feel worthless. Your dad fights to keep you alive for years. He loses in 2 different liberal courts. You are scheduled for euthanasia. The days pass. You do an interview, which is really a desperate cry for help. Still, nobody does anything. The date gets closer. They keep you isolated, so you have no idea there is so much love and support outside. Your best friend desperately tries to get up to talk to you. She is blocked by doctors who seem to take pleasure in the power they have. The process begins. You are alone and probably pretty scared. You feel like you have no choice. The sedatives set in. The last thing you see is a cold, dark hospital room. The toxin is administered. Your lungs slowly stop working. You die in your sleep. Your abusers still face no consequences. You become a monument to the failure of a state that was supposed to protect you. And there you have it. Pretty bad. Pretty bad. Something like this would only happen in a leftist-ruled state. Only happens with leftists. And now the world's slowly pulling their head out of their ass and seeing these leftists for what they are. Anti-human. They're anti-human. They're anti-life. They are anti-prosperity. They're anti-order. They're anti-law. They bring nothing but death, destruction, misery. And the world wants to move on. We're all ready to move on. And, if California had their way, they would be they'd be moving extreme leftists like that too. California is an absolute shithole. Their leaders are complete incompetent buffoons. And they're on the verge of bankruptcy, as if this should surprise anybody, because we've all seen the stories of how crappy they are at managing their budgets. $20 billion wasted on a high-speed train to nowhere. They got about a quarter mile of infrastructure put in, no tracks, and $20 billion is gone. $24 billion. They spend $12 billion trying to house the homeless. Oh, we got to take care of the homeless, and we got to help them, and we got to do something about it, only to spend the $12 billion and end up with more homeless people on their streets. And over 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 again, we see their failures of leadership, the ridiculous decisions that they make. And now essentially they're basically functionally bankrupt. And I'm okay with that. I think people are leaving California. They are losing a lot of their tax base, and I say good. Let you reap the consequences of these policies, of all this retarded shit you've been doing for the last 30 or 40 years. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And you've gotten worse and worse leaders who made worse and worse decisions. You've tried to buy your constituency by handing out free shit that then you take out debt to pay for. And now, the chickens are coming home to roost. And so why would I feel bad about this? Let's take a listen to what David Friedberg has to say.
David Friedberg, what is your hot take for Hill and Valley?
What have you heard from others?
We've heard everything from Anthropic to Iran to IPOs.
I feel like a hot take should be the thing that no one else is talking about.
Okay.
So I think for me, it would be California is functionally bankrupt. People don't realize how screwed California is. And I worry that if California falls, so does the union. This is because for California to get rescued would be a big cost to red states. And I think it creates in the years ahead, a lot of tension. So California has a public pension system, and that public pension system, retirees have paid into it, and they get some benefits out. And the amount that they're owed back out is somewhere between $250 billion and $1 trillion more than has been paid in. $50 billion to $1 trillion short. If it was the federal government, it would be like, okay, we'll just print more money. California doesn't have the ability to print money. So California has to pay this out, and you can't restructure retirement benefits. There was a Supreme Court case in California that said that once an employee has been offered retirement benefits, even if they're currently an employee, you can never restructure their retirement benefits. It has to stay forever. And the state cannot declare bankruptcy. There's no way for the state to functionally declare bankruptcy. There's no law to allow it. no state has ever declared bankruptcy. And the retirement benefits sit senior to the bonds in California. So you have to pay out the retirement benefits before you pay out all the bondholders that have loaned California the money that they use to run all their programs and services. So that's why California is facing a massive fiscal cliff in the years ahead. And I think it is so profound that it really does risk the ruin of the state, because it's the only way out of it is you're going to have to bail out the state. And that would be this huge kind of problem, because then all the red states would say, we're not paying for the bailout, and it would cause a lot of conflict in America. So I don't think people realize how big of a problem this is and what it's going to drive in the years ahead. So that's my hot take. That's why I'm really worried about California. I'm really worried about the governor race, the assembly, and this isn't about taxes and billionaire tax act, because I don't think you can actually tax your way out of this problem. People will just leave the state.
Yeah.
So that's my big hot take. I'm worried about California. I think we all should be, and we should be focused on actually talking about this problem, not talking about all the bullshit that all the politicians are talking about and all the nonsense and everything from homelessness to whatever. California's functional bankruptcy is a major risk to the country. And I think we need to figure out what we need to, what we can change to fix it.
Are you working with Nick Shirley on this?
I'm not working with Nick Shirley on this. Nick Shirley.
This has been a problem in California for a long time. I've heard this going back 20 years, that California is functionally bankrupt. So they somehow just keep pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. And eventually, they're not going to be able to do that anymore. And the more that they get in debt, the more that they waste their money that doesn't go to actual services for the people, the more people are going to leave, and the faster the collapse is going to happen. And they're not going to be able to bring in enough immigrants to try to prop up this scam.
I think does a great job exposing how so much of that money is wasted. I asked this question of Matt Mahan, who's running for governor. I was like, dude, where'd the $14 billion go that went into that high-speed rail project?
Right.
It was like, no, it's a high-speed rail, but there's no rail.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Where does the money go?
14 billion. I'm like, whose pocket is that money in? Right. Like, everyone should ask that question of your government, of your elected officials, of your politicians, of your leaders. Where the hell did the money go? And in many cases, you'll find that it just went to create wealth for a few people that are cronies or thieves or that stole it, or it was used to create fake jobs that aren't productive, meaning no one's making anything. They're just taking money and living off of that money from the government. And both of those are not what was promised. When people pay taxes and the government says it's going to do a service, we need to hold the government accountable to do the service. And that just doesn't happen. So I think Nick Shirley holds the government accountable. I think there are dozens of copycats, which I friggin' love. You go out and show the crazy shit that's going on and ask the tough questions, run the audits. Treasury in the federal government should be running the audits and figuring out where'd all the money go. Whose pocket is it in today? You can follow dollars. Where did they go? Who has all that money? Who has the nice home? Who has the Bentley? Who has the lakefront home? Like, where did all the money go? And I think we're going to be really shocked and surprised if we actually keep going with this narrative. And that's what everyone, this is not political. This is not Dem versus Republican. This is just straight up like how government should be run in a democracy. Hold it accountable, ask the questions, and be comfortable asking those questions. So I think that's something we should all be embracing. And anyone who fights back against it is simply un-American. And I think it's a real question, because they're probably the ones that are in some way participating, benefiting, or getting elected because of the fraud, because of the waste. And everyone should be asking this question, both sides of the aisle. And by the way, if the Democrats want to win and crush it in the midterms and become president in 28 and take over the country, if they ask this question and they found answers and they proposed solutions, I think they have a run. And they should be embracing it as much as the Republicans are. It's not.
Absolutely, 100,000%. Why there is no political will, though, to actually find out where the money went. None of these politicians seem interested in it, especially not the California people. They're not even trying to look into it. At least in Minnesota, they had tried to look into it in the past. They did a shit job of doing it, but at least there was some kind of group of people who were concerned and who were actually doing something about it. And the fraud's going to be 10 times worse here in California. And so the California thinks that the solution to this problem is to just bring in a bunch of illegals, and then they can pay taxes, and then somehow they'll milk the illegals for all that they can. But that isn't really the way that this works. There's a video here talking about, San Francisco. So this is in San Francisco. And there was a study done that's showing how many illegals there are in San Francisco. New California reports that 477,000 illegals work just in San Francisco alone. 500,000 illegals just in San Francisco. And San Francisco is not all that big. Bay Area Council Economic Institute, more than 477,000 undocumented workers call the Bay Area home. 39% of all maids are illegals. They work at hotels, at restaurants, and construction. This chart here shows that 82% of maids and housekeepers in the Bay Area are immigrants. 39% of them are undocumented.
Mass deportations could cost the Bay Area $67 billion.
So you can see why they would be so opposed to mass deportations, right? And that's a lot of people doing a lot of things in their city, and they're getting they're able to sort of, take advantage of these people because they are illegal, so they can force them to work for lower wages so that they don't have to pay an American to do it for American wages. And then they act like this is some kind of unsolvable problem if these illegals were to be removed from the country. Well, somebody's going to still be your maid. You're just going to have to pay them more money, you cheap bastard. That's the only difference. They act like there's no one who's ever going to do any of these jobs. These people don't exist. No one's going to go and be a maid. No one's going to clean things. Nobody's going to do construction. That's crazy. But really what it is they just want cheap construction. They want cheap maids. They want to be able to abuse these people and take advantage of them being illegal so that they get cheaper services and cheaper stuff. Now, they're going to go on to say that, it's so beneficial to have them here because they're such an economic stimulus and they pay all these taxes and they create all this GDP. And I'm going to show you that that's fake.
A year. That's according to a new report by the Bay Area Council. ABC 7 Eyewitness News reporter Suzanne Fahn is in the newsroom with a closer look. Suzanne?
So, Dan, the new report shows just how much of a difference immigrant and undocumented workers make for a local economy. Supporters say the report shows immigration enforcement is not just a federal issue, but also a local economic concern. New numbers show just how much undocumented workers contribute to the Bay Area economy. More than 477,000 undocumented workers call the Bay Area home. And undocumented workers in the region pay more than $8 billion in taxes a year.
This was a follow-up to our statewide study we released last June.
A new report by Bay Area Council Economic Institute shows that there are 2.5 million immigrant workers in the Bay Area. In the Mission District, many of the businesses are owned by immigrants.
The city of San Francisco and the Bay Area and California as a whole runs on immigrant labor. From the flowers, from the food, from everything is touched by immigrant labor.
The report also shows undocumented workers are a huge part of the Bay Area workforce. They work at hotels, at restaurants, in construction. This chart here shows that 82% of the maids and housekeepers in the Bay Area are immigrants. 39% of them are undocumented. The new report shows exactly how much.
So are there even any actual American citizens living in the Bay Area anymore? I mean, if they have 2.5 million immigrants, I mean, how big is the Bay Area? I don't even know what the population is. It doesn't seem like it's all that large. That is wild. I wonder what the percentage there is of immigrants to citizens. I bet it's like 2 to 1. So all the citizens have left because it's a shithole place. And they've taken their money with them and they've gone other places where it's cheaper to live and where the leaders actually have some sense. Now,
much undocumented workers mean to our economy and what would happen if they all disappeared because of mass deportations.
What we found is that would be around $67 billion in GDP loss if we lost our undocumented worker population. That's the size of a small country, just the undocumented labor that contributes to our region.
Okay, that sounds like a lot. Oh, you're going to lose $67 billion of GDP. Well, when you look into GDP, it includes some really strange things like government spending, for example. So if you give an illegal immigrant vouchers to rent an apartment, that is actually part of GDP. That increases your GDP because government spending is part of GDP. So the 67 billion that they create, they also cost, when benefits, they cost about $8 billion to have there because of all the benefits they get. So you're supposed to think, okay, well, they only cost 8 billion, but they create 67 billion. So that's good, right? We're positive. Oh, no, 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 no. Because on $67 billion worth of GDP, how much tax revenue does that create? That's the question you have to ask. How much tax revenue does $67 billion worth of economic activity actually create in San Francisco? Okay. Well, it creates about $3 billion. So they're still costing more to live there. Anyway, the GDP is kind of a bunch of bullshit anyway, but it's something that people like to act. You know, if you take government money and then you go and spend it, it takes up the GDP. Is that a real number? Did that actually produce anything? It didn't.
The Trump administration and others have argued that undocumented workers have hurt the economy.
And that doesn't even take into account how much it costs to educate their children, right? Because they're not paying for it because they're renters. So then that means the citizens have to educate the kids. It doesn't take into account how much money they send back out of the community. It doesn't count how much it's costing in the state to pay for their health insurance and their emergency room visits, their SNAP benefits, all that kind of stuff. Every time these calculations are done over and over and over and over and over again, it shows every single time that illegal immigrants are a net negative. They cost more than they produce because of all these programs that they're on, because we have to educate their kids, because we have to send their kids to college, and we have to pay for it. So if this 500,000 people were kicked out, it wouldn't actually destroy the city. It would actually free the people up, and it would save them a bunch of tax money. It would lower the rent prices because now you got 500,000 people who left. It would make the schools less burdened, so you wouldn't have to have so many people as teachers and ESL people and special education people. You wouldn't have to add on to the schools and all this kind of stuff. So this is always sort of the fear tactic that the left uses. They're like, oh, they make us so much money being here, and everything is about economics, obviously. And so how can we just get rid of these people? We got to keep them here because they are just so productive. They just create so much value and do things that nobody else would want to do. It's complete bullshit. It's a fairy tale. It's made up. It's a mythology. It's not true whatsoever when you actually look into it. Now, legal immigrants from Japan, from Europe, from Australia, they do create economic value because they're not on benefits. They don't steal your money. They come here and they do their profession. They do it well. They want to be part of the society. They rent their own apartment. They pay for their own food. They don't expect you to educate their kids. All that. So they're fine. But illegals, not worth it. Too expensive.
Some Bay Area leaders say mass deportations would be devastating for the Bay Area.
When you remove 500,000 people from the economy, you're really talking about a serious disruption to the economy.
Many say just the threat of mass deportation.
Well, it's funny because they're like, oh, well, we brought in a bunch of illegals, even though that's illegal. And now we're so dependent on them that if you get rid of them, bad things will happen. Well, you dumbass, why did you bring so many in then? That's your own fault. If this causes San Francisco to go bankrupt, fine. Who gives a fuck? I don't care. Good. Bunch of retards there anyway. tired of them dictating to the rest of us how we have to deal with these things and what we have to do.
Deportations is already impacting the Bay Area economy.
It keeps them from being consumers. It keeps them from taking their kids to school. It keeps them from going out and going to the doctor and getting health checkups. And all that has an impact on the economy as well.
And the new report shows that undocumented workers in the Bay Area earn more than $21 billion a year, and that removing them from the workforce would have a noticeable impact on construction, hospitality, and caregiving. In the newsroom, Suzanne Fawn, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Fuck them. Who cares? Fuck San Francisco. Fuck their leaders. I hope they go bankrupt. I don't give a shit. You know, and not only San Francisco, obviously LA's a total shit show, a bunch of fucking retards there too. So here's an article about the LA mayoral candidate and her take on homeless encampments. And this is what I was talking about before, that the leftist ideology is it's upside down. They think they choose the criminal over the victim. They want, you know, they don't choose what's safe for kids. They're okay if kids get chopped up, you know, because of stupid. I mean, it's just everything's upside down in their world. They can't see clearly. They can't just make simple, easy decisions. Like, for example, in this article that I'm going to read to you, it's simply about enforcing the law that's already on the books in California that homeless encampments have to be at least 500 feet away from schools. And this moron lady is going to say, oh, well, that's really not important. We don't really have to, because what could possibly happen? You know, what could possibly happen to these kids that they walk past these drug addicts and mentally unhealthy people? It's not like anything could possibly happen. So I'm going to read a little bit of this to you just so you can see how stupid it is. Los Angeles mayoral candidate something foreign was booed for a shocking speech where she revealed her views on homeless encampments near schools. She's a member of the hard left Democratic Socialists of America. She shrugged her shoulders when asked her thoughts on how close they can be to children. She claimed there was no difference in enforcing city law, stating that they cannot be within 500 feet of any education facility or daycare center. That seems like a pretty reasonable thing, right? That they need to be 500 feet away. I mean, I'd prefer them farther away than that for sure. 500 feet's not even that far. But, you know, some distance. You don't want these kids running across needles and, you know, homeless people who are going to be raping kids and pedophiles and all this kind of bullshit. At the 2024 Sherman Oaks Homeowner Association debate during her re-election run, she dismissed the idea that distance makes kids safer, probably with a lot of data, I'm sure. I don't think a kid's going to be safer if they are 10 feet or 500 feet away from a school. She just is going to make that declaration, not because there was maybe there was actually reasons for making that law in the first place. Maybe, but she doesn't care because she just thinks that kids should be put in danger. She's not interested in protecting the kids. A lot of these far left crazy fucks, they actually despise children. It is weird as hell, but they don't like kids. They do not like children. They don't like them at all. They despise children. They see them as being a noose around their neck. That's why they're so pro-abortion. That's why they're so pro, you know, genital mutilation and all this kind of shit, because they don't actually like kids. That's why this is an important deal to her. She's like, so what? So what if a kid gets, you know, kidnapped or stabbed or raped, you know, like, so what? Who cares? That's her attitude. Footage showed her shrug as the crowd at the powerful meeting roundly booed her before she rolled her eyes and put her microphone down. The exchange took place before the same crowd where she previously went viral for blaming Toyota for catalytic converter thefts. The mayoral candidate has a long history of voting against expansions of the city's anti-camping law, which bans sitting, sleeping, or storing property within set distances of sensitive sites. These include within 500 feet of schools and daycare centers, and often within 50 to 500 feet of parks, libraries, and other public areas, depending on the council. She has opposed multiple amendments, arguing the policy largely shifts encampments from block to block, rather than solving them. Keeping children safe is so important to me, especially as the mother of 10-year-old twins who walk to school every day. Rather than spending resources to move encampments down the street where they remain on corridors where children and others walk, my focus has been on building a citywide homelessness response system that works to quickly and safely move people indoors. Why can't you do both? They always are doing this either or thing where it's like, well, I don't know, either we move these people and put them into a shelter, or we let them build their encampments on school grounds. That we can't do anything about both of those things at the same time. Parents across Los Angeles have warned that not enforcing the law has had a significant impact on their children. Some described walking their kids past encampments with open drug use, erratic behavior, and blocked pathways just to get to schools. Others said they were forced to reroute daily routines or drive short distances out of fear. In Council District 4 and beyond, families report children asking difficult questions about what they were seeing, from people in distress to public nudity to drug activity. Several parents said their kids were scared to walk alone. Sleep disturbances increased, and what should be routine school commutes become a source of anxiety. In some cases, parents point to more extreme incidents near schools, including overdoses, fires, and confrontations that left lasting emotional impact on young students. There is no teachable moment in that, one parent said at the time, describing how exposure to those scenes changed their child's sense of safety. She is currently in second place, polling at 17%. Right behind incumbent Karen Bass, who's also a retard, who is at 25%. So this is more of these loony leftist crazy people. All the people, the society, the parents, they want these homeless encampments away from their schools. And her, as the representative of them, she's like, who cares what the people think? Who cares what they want? Why would I care? I don't care. These parents, they're blowing this out of proportion. So what? Their kids are traumatized. So what? We're going to let these people just make their homeless encampments wherever the fuck they want to. And this is basically every leader in California now. This is the kind of backwards thinking that they have, the kind of dumbass people they have leading and making their decisions. This is why they're going bankrupt. This is why people are leaving, because it's an unlivable place where these people don't actually take the normal citizens seriously. They're all hyper concerned about all these fringe groups, and if those people are being displaced, and if they're being oppressed, and if they're being discriminated against. And then all the normal people are the ones who end up being oppressed and discriminated against, and nobody gives a fuck. All right. So anyway, it gets pretty annoying. And it just keeps coming out of California over and over. And it's been like this for a long time. It's not like this is a surprise to anybody, obviously. Thought I had one more thing on California. No, I don't think I do. Okay. But it's not just California. It's also where more other leftist controlled wastelands. So we've got something here about Seattle. So Seattle's most valuable office buildings, skyscrapers, lose $3.7 billion in value as vacancies surge. So Seattle is on the way to becoming Detroit. Businesses are leaving in record numbers, leaving skyscrapers vacant. I'm going to read this to you a little bit too. All those empty office buildings in downtown Seattle are dragging down property values, according to newly released King County Assessor data. According to the King County Assessor's Office, the city's most valuable skyscrapers have lost $3.7 billion in value since 2022. Approximately a third of downtown commercial space remains vacant. A third of downtown commercial space is vacant. Among the biggest decreases in value are, and then they list the towers, a lot owned by Amazon and stuff, so boo-hoo, Amazon's losing money, don't care. The 3 office buildings listed above have lost more than $1 billion in value over the last 3 years. Amazon has parted with more than 1 million square feet of office space. The Downtown Seattle Association told the Puget Sound Business Journal that this will mean changes to how the city collects taxes. Oh, you mean having those buildings occupied and their values up makes money for the city? So driving away all of your businesses is a bad strategy? Huh. So this is what happens. So they're going to have to change how the city collects taxes, including a greater burden on renters, homeowners, and small businesses to fill the gap left by less reliable property tax revenue. Seattle's property tax revenue fell more than $2.8 million short of projections last year. So now the people who didn't leave because they wanted to stay and live in their town, now they're going to get fucked over because the leaders drove out the businesses who were helping pay property taxes, and now the normal people are going to have their property taxes raised, which then what's that going to cause? It's going to cause people to leave because their property taxes are going to be so high. So then they're going to have to raise property taxes again. This is the far left progressive leadership that is so ass backwards that it's absolutely infuriating. Uh-oh. I got something going on here. Shit. What the heck? Is that working better? No, I'm still all skipping. What the hell? Fuck. Let me see here. I don't know. I must have to. Is that better? Is that? It's still skipping. Sorry about that, guys. There's that. Maybe I got it fixed. Yeah, it looks like it's working better now. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, this is what happens with leftist rule. This is what happens with, you get these people in there. They don't really know anything. They don't know how to run a business. They don't know how to run a city. They don't know anything about anything. They're just ideologues who think, yeah, we need to have rich people pay more. And then the rich people leave and everybody suffers. It's fucking stupid. It's ridiculous. It's a well-known phenomenon that everybody should know about, but they do it over and over and over again. So one thing I thought was really interesting is that in Europe, they had a recent vote. Oh, it's down here. Yeah. So here's obviously a post written by somebody who's a leftist. He says, everything's gone to hell. The European Parliament has just approved the most radical migrant detention and deportation plan ever proposed, and the expulsions and returns of illegals will be implemented immediately. This is something without precedent. Good job, Europe. Maybe there are some balls left in Europe. So this is announces the European Parliament's approval of a stringent EU migration reform, enabling immediate deportations of irregular migrants, up to 2 years of detentions, and return hubs outside of the EU. So this is a good thing. And this is an indication, this was, I think, brought on, one of the major people or groups that wanted this voted on was the AfD, which is the right-wing party, up-and-coming party in Germany. And so that this thing would get passed is a strong indication of how everything is moving to the right. Even in Europe, there's a huge upswell of right-wing sentiment. They're tired of the migrants. They're tired of leftist rule. They're tired of being ignored. They're tired of seeing their countries overtaken by foreigners. their culture changed, their society destroyed, their streets dirty, their buildings ruined, their taxes go up, their cost of living go up, their economic opportunities go down. The destruction that comes with this unchecked mass migration it's hard to even express how bad it is. And people are sick and tired of it. They're fed up with it. And this is a strong indication of what I've been saying. The whole world is moving to the right. The whole world. Maybe not Canada, maybe not, I don't know, a place here or there, but Austria moving to the right, Germany, France, Italy, UK, even strong support in Sweden, all of Scandinavia, really. You've got obviously Eastern Europe has already strongly right wing. You got Australia, up and coming party. They're starting to make some noise. And you've got Trump in the U.S. You've got a whole bunch of movement in the South America. And this is the future. This is where we're going. There's finally enough energy and momentum behind mass deportations that things are going to start happening. And of course, the leftists, the progressives are going to squeal about it. They're going to be complaining about it. They're going to act like, what is this even about? We don't even know. There's not even any issues. It's not like these people come with problems, but they're just ignorant. They don't know any of the stats. They don't know any of the data. They don't know all the problems that have come along with having all these people. So let's take a look at this video. It's just them cheering.
And it is adopted. So okay. We have many votes to go through, guys.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. They celebrated. I celebrate. Welcome to the fight, Europe. Okay, so this is another part of that the world is moving to the right. This is Restore Britain specifically, and Restore is coming like a firestorm into the UK. It's going to totally overwhelm people who don't know what's going on. It's going to be a total tidal wave takeover. Rupert Lowe's going to be the prime minister, and so they're writing here. The growth of Restore Britain is completely unprecedented in British political history. In less than 6 weeks, they have almost 400 constituency branches and over 120,000 members. At this rate, they will have all 650 branches set up in no time, all run by real British patriots. To put this in perspective, Reform still barely have functioning branches in so many seats across the country, and their leaders just texted all their members to beg them to become paper candidates. This is only going in one direction. Restore Britain are inevitable. Absolutely. Rupert Lowe said, some exciting news to share. Restore Britain's membership has just gone through 120,000. That is double the Liberal Democrats. Double. And they just started. There's a huge need and desire for a party like Restore Britain, especially among the young men. And Rupert Lowe's just the guy to lead it. Reform is done. They're done. People were hoping that they would be this kind of a party, that they would be real aggressive about it, they'd be serious about it, that they would take the immigration issue seriously. And Farage is basically a pansy. He's basically a wet paper bag. A wet noodle or whatever. He's got no oomph to him, and he doesn't really believe in it. He's just playing a role. So he's done. Reform's done. People are going to go. The people who wanted Reform to be a serious party are going to leave. They're going to join Restore, and that's already what they've been doing. And it's gonna be fantastic, and things are going to actually change. So dark light delirium here. Let me respond to this comment. He says the illegal immigrant crisis was instituted by the left to facilitate the pre-planned solution by the right, and our liberties will be eviscerated in the process. You know, as far as the illegal immigrants go and legal immigrants, it's definitely a bipartisan. Both right and left are implicated in it for sure. They have always all wanted these immigrants in here. You know, especially back in like the 80s and 90s, it was a real Republican thing because they were the business owners and they wanted to bring in cheap labor. And so they were all for letting immigrants in because then you get lower consumer goods, you get cheaper houses, you get, made their arguments for all this kind of stuff. At the same time, they were taking and moving their factories overseas and choosing foreign labor for those too, so that the good jobs left here while they were also bringing in immigrants to replace other jobs. So it's like this double loss of jobs and being replaced by non-citizens in our whole country. And so they're both to blame. It's at least one of us has finally pulled our heads out of our asses and realized what a catastrophe this was. Total catastrophe. Totally not worth it. Made us way poorer as a country. Way poorer. We would be so much richer if we would have never done any of that stuff. If we would have fought harder to keep our factories here. And one of the reasons that they well, I'm not going to get into that, but it's absolutely crazy, disgusting, and it's both parties are responsible for it. So I do like this Andy Ogles guy. He's got a plan to overturn the Hart-Celler Act from 1965, and that basically, when they wrote that act, prior to that, basically it was Europeans were allowed into our country, people with similar cultural backgrounds, and that was it. And so they came in, they integrated. It was great. We never had problems. They didn't go on welfare endlessly. They didn't come here specifically to just steal our money. They wanted to come here to contribute, to be part of our society, to have the opportunity to grow and all that kind of stuff. Whereas what we've gotten since 1965 is just a bunch of third worlders who are incompetent and selfish. And they just come here simply to abuse our generosity. It's not merit-based. It's not anything based. It's just like, you're not from here? Sure, come on in and take our shit. So let's listen to kind of what his plan is here, because I think it's a pretty good plan.
He's leading a new bill that would reverse key portions of the Hart-Celler Act. That's the 1965 Immigration Act. It would shift it away from these family sponsorships, family reunification, and back toward answering the essential question. When you come to America, not only do you want to be an American, but do you love America? Now joining me is Congressman from Tennessee, Republican Andy Ogles. Congressman, it's great to have you on the program. I've seen a lot of what you've been talking about, familiar with your proposed bill. I think it's entitled the Assimilation Act. Tell me why this has been so important to you. This is a cause that you almost single-handedly have been fighting. Why?
Well, I mean, just look at our communities. And one of the things in particular, I mean, obviously we see it here at home, but we can look to Europe to see what's coming down the pike, what's on the horizon. So you can look at London, you can look at Paris, you can look at Rome, where in Rome, roughly 70 to 80% of sex crimes are illegals. Again, when you look at Paris and you look at London, the same types of 50 to 60% of sex crimes are illegals or these migrants. And so now we've got to get serious. Because like you said, we've had these terrorist attacks. You had the shooting in Virginia, the shooting in Texas. You had the attempted bombing in New York. You had the car ramming in Michigan. And all of these individuals hate America. They don't like who we are, what we believe in. They don't love this country. And quite frankly, this idea that you can come here, this chain migration, because look, annually under chain migration, this family migration, it's roughly 700,000 people. My bill will take that down to 50 Well, people. So you actually have to have a reason to be here, and you actually have to be the immediate family, not some distant cousin, uncle, whatever. And so this is a pragmatic approach. And so before 1965, before Hart-Celler, we had a reasonable immigration program. After 1965, you've seen it be passed. Then you have this floodgate.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. The 60s, in my opinion, really fucked up a lot about our country. So many bad decisions made, so many things with long-term consequences. When basically what we need to do is we need to unwind a lot of these laws and policies that were put into place in the 60s, because they've just had ripple effects that have made our society worse, our society more burdened, our society more contentious, our society less competitive, flooding us with immigrants, causing us all kinds of racial divisions and divisions over sexuality and like constant fighting over all this kind of stuff. And it's all directly related to the 1960s and the bills that they were passed. So we need to get rid of those, and we need to go back to common sense and reason. And we need to make rules and laws that make sense. It makes absolutely no sense to bring in third worlders. And the only argument anyone can ever make is that, oh, we just need them to do the lowest level of labor. And we don't. We don't. It's simply that big businesses want to pay less in wages and keep more profit. That's it. These hotels want to make more money. That's why they want illegals to clean their rooms. Because if they had to pay an American a decent wage, they would make less money. Well, boo fucking who? Go fuck yourself. Dark light delirium, I agree. I agree with legal immigration as well. And I think that, we get a lot of benefit from legal immigrants, actually. There's a lot of benefit there. There's a lot that they do for us, a lot that they help us with, a lot of really high level things that we need people to do. So with legal immigration, you know who the people are. You vet them. They're thoroughly vetted. You know what you're getting. With the illegals, you don't know what it is. You don't know who they are. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know. But the problem is with the illegals, going back to this, you don't like the ICE eviscerating American rights on the pretense of finding illegals. The problem is once the illegals are here, it is fucking difficult to get rid of them. You don't know where they are. You don't know who they are. You don't know if they're legal or not. How are you supposed? It's not like they wear a tag or there's some database that shows where they live or who they are. So how are you supposed to find these people? This is why you can't let them in the first place. And you got to be vetting all these people to begin with. So you just let them flood the country. We don't even know how many there are here. We don't know where they live. We only basically know who they are once they commit a crime and we arrest them and put them into prison. And then we're like, oh shit, this guy's illegal. So that's playing defense, not really playing offense. So how are you going to go round up these people? I don't know. I know what some common sense things we should do: make bank accounts illegal. No, illegals cannot get a bank account. Banks need to check whether they're people who are getting bank accounts or citizens. You have to show proof of citizenship. That they should absolutely not be able to be on any kind of housing. I don't care if they have a kid who was born here and the kid is the one who's on welfare. Don't care. Don't get it. No housing, no SNAP benefits, no Medicare, none of it. And they would leave. A lot of them would leave because that's the only reason they're here, is so that they can steal our money. So that would at least be part of it. How else are you going to, how are you going to find these people? Deconstruct Church and State said, California collapsing. Weird. I'm here and it's business as usual. Okay, well, I guess because you don't experience it collapsing, then it must not be. Good point. Yeah, have you actually looked into anything? ever actually looked into the debt that California has, actually looked into the fraud that's going on, actually looked into the shit policies that politicians are making? Have you looked into how many people are fleeing and how much tax revenue they've lost and all that kind of stuff? You haven't. You're just living your life, which is fine. I'm glad that you don't notice it. But the thing is, these things are long processes. This has been going on for 40 years in California. So it's little bit by little bit. You're a frog being boiled in water and you don't notice it. Why do you think so many people have left California? Over the last, between 2019 and 2023, 3 million people left blue states for red states. Why do you think that is? It's because their policies strangle the people who are there. They want to bring in a bunch of illegals. They want you to pay to educate the illegals, their kids. They want you to pay for them to be on all kinds of welfare. They want you to pay with, some kind of crime that's done to you or whatever. They don't care. But I wouldn't expect somebody from California to be all that educated anyway. So, I guess that's that. So this is a little more evidence of right-wing sort of upheaval that's going on in Europe. This is a march. They're shouting Europe Youth Revolution, and they mean it. A lot of young guys there. Remigrate. Yeah. There's something's going on, something's going to happen. And they talk about remigration a lot in Europe, and that's a little different than deportations that we talk about in the US. Remigration is actually a bigger process. So that is also denaturalizing people, which we don't really even talk about in the US. That seems like, whoa, we're never going to be able to do that. We can't even get the illegals out, let alone denaturalize people who we've let become citizens. But they want to denaturalize. They even say things like, okay, if your third generation back wasn't born here, then you got to go too. That's all part of remigration. So it's a much more extreme version of deportations, in my opinion, than what we kind of have going on in the US. The Dems intentionally flooded America with illegals specifically to cause this problem, which is all part of the plan. Well, possibly. I think maybe you're giving Democrats a little too much credit for actually having a plan. But, there's a reason why in their states there's the sanctuary cities and why they entice them with benefits and why they pay to have them house them and pay to feed them and pay all this kind of stuff for them. One of the reasons is that people are leaving their states, and so their tax revenue, they need to keep that going, and they are losing people to work, so they do need workers and stuff. That's sort of like the vanilla version of it. I think really what it was a play on boosting their populations specifically in their places so that they could get more congressional seats, so that they could get more electoral power, or at least not lose their electoral power, since the electoral college is divvied up based on the population of your state. So if they're losing population, which California has been for a long time, the only reason it's stayed stable is because they've brought in immigrants to sort of paper over the fact that they were losing population. They've been losing citizens for a long, long time. They bring in legal and illegal immigrants in order to make it look like that's not happening. So now you're at the point to where I think it's about 70% of the population of California is immigrants. Something like that. 60, 70%. Because they just kept bringing in more and more and more and more because they didn't want to lose congressional power. They didn't want to lose their representatives. And so if they were not allowed to do that, and if we were to eliminate all of the immigrants that have come in as a result of all that, the Republicans would have way more power. Way, way more power. It wouldn't even be close. So I think that's really what it was about, is political power, because they knew that their policies were failures, that people didn't want to live under them. And, you know, a lot of the evidence is that immigrants, both legal and illegal, tend to vote far left or farther left than average American. So they tend to want to, so they vote for more benefits. They vote for more government interference. They vote for more minority rights. They vote for all the kind of leftist special interest causes. And so they're the perfect people for them to bring in and to try to get on the voter rolls, to try to all that kind of stuff. So I think that there's a lot to that too. So here's a poll showing Restore Britain rapidly growing. So just in a month, not even a month, it was in over the course of 22 days. How likely would you be to consider voting for Restore Britain? The percentage went from 13 to 16%. That's a rapid increase. You know, by the end of the year, how high will that percentage get? You know, and I think they don't vote until 2029, if I'm correct. I think if I remember right, 2029. So they've got a long time to go. And it's going to, you know, it's a long process. So, but it does give them time to actually build their party, actually get people into parliament and all that kind of stuff. So, actually get their message out there to people who aren't on X. So, you know, they might not hear about what's going on. So I was talking about this yesterday, but when I was in Antigua, over, you know, about a week ago, and I was talking to some guys from the UK there, and I was asking them about Restore Britain, and they basically didn't even know what Restore Britain was. So the normal folk still have a ways to go before they even, you know, have any idea what's really even going on in their own country. So there'll be, you know, and that'll just take time. These guys were probably in their upper 50s, so you know, they're probably not on X. They're probably just watching, you know, BBC maybe or something like that. And so BBC's not talking about Restore. So, all right, guys. Well, that's it for me. I'm going to leave it there. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. And we will see you later.